Welcome to Sports Tonight Live presents The Cage. We've got another fantastic show for you tonight. It's been a really big week in MMA. We've had some fantastic fights with Tate Rousey. We've had a really good event in the UFC. So we're going to talk all about that. We're going to talk a bit about women's roles in general in the UFC and in MMA. We've got with us some great guests. With me, as always, my partner in crime, number 48, Brad Wharton. Good to see you, Brad.
Great to be here. A little bit damp than I usually am. Brave the wind and rain, but got here in the end.
It's been raining out there, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And really excited. I've got Danielle Curzon in studio with us, and we're going to talk a bit about your career. Danielle, really glad you could join us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So let's just kind of get right into it. So you are one of the few female, maybe the only female ref in the UK at the moment.
Yeah, I am, and I must admit I thoroughly enjoy it. I really do.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about this show and love about having guests on is we get to hear not only your professional opinion and what people do professionally, but we get to hear from you as a fan and you know, what it is that brings you into MMA. So you've just come back from a really big trip to America, haven't you?
I have, yes. I went over to do Herb Dean's ABC certificated course, which was really challenging, but probably the best experience of my life.
Really? And how long was that course?
It was 2 days. We had judging on the first day and refereeing on the second, and they were two separate qualifications, but to enable you to get the referee's certification, we had to pass both.
Oh, outstanding. And so you were, walk us through that training. What was it, classroom? Was it practical? Was it both?
The first day, the judging, it started off in the classroom, and we had to go through quite a large PowerPoint. We then had to watch videos and we had to score them. We were being constantly assessed through the course. And then in the afternoon, we had to do a practical in front of a panel of judges. We had to demonstrate submissions, guard passes and various other things. And we had to then sit a written exam. It was 2 written exams on the first day. It wasn't multiple choice. We had to handwrite all of our answers, and it had we had to achieve 95% or over to pass. So that was day 1. And then in the evening, I literally just slept. I went straight up to my room. I was exhausted. Had some dinner, and that was it until the next day. And then it all started again on the refereeing front. And again, we had an equally large PowerPoint. We watched some speeches by people from the UFC. Again, we had to watch some different videos. And then we had an even harder practical, again in front of a panel of judges, where it got really in depth about the submissions, what the weaknesses were of the submissions, what the dangers were to the fighters, how as a referee would you break the submission if the fighters wouldn't split. And then we had an even harder written exam at the end of day 2.
Really? So I mean, it was pretty full on for 2 full days.
It was actually harder than the full-week SIA close protection course that I did.
Was it?
Definitely.
Yeah. So what do you think about, I guess, the standard refs in the US, obviously because there's governing bodies and the whole thing, referees are required to go through those courses, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think it's right, and I think it's something that we are lacking here in the UK, because you have lots of different associations that make up their own courses, but because we don't have a governing body, we've got no main body to be accredited and certified by. And I think it's really good and something that maybe we should take on board from the Americans, because it was quite worrying on the first day when there were people there saying, oh yeah, this is my 2nd or 3rd time, I failed before.
Really?
So it was quite nerve-wracking because there is quite a low pass rate. But obviously I think that's good, because if it was a course that everyone could do and pass, it wouldn't be worthy of its certification.
I mean, we were talking about that before we got here today. I think I'd much rather see a course that maybe 1 or 2 people passed and everyone else failed, than a course where, you know, 20 people pass and 1 person fails, and we've got guys who aren't qualified to do the job in the job. I mean, for me, refereeing, possibly the most important job in mixed martial arts outside of the fighters. So I think it's essential that, you know, we keep it streamlined and only let the cream of the crop pass these courses.
Referees are more important than the MC? Come on.
Well, apart from you, obviously, Bret, but, you know.
No, I agree with you completely. I think that, you know, particularly we did a show the other week about grassroots MMA, and particularly in those shows where you've got guys that are fighters that are less experienced, fighters that are less able to adapt and move and change in the cage. It's so important that you've got referees that know what they're doing and know what they're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you're a young kid getting into this sport and you go out there and you get your arm broken or you get your leg broken, it could not only impact your career, but it could impact the whole way you look at mixed martial arts, and people could be put off by that. You know, the guys earning millions at the high end of the UFC, they can afford to take a few months off and rehab an injury, but, you know, guys who are breaking in, it's really important that they're protected and they're protected well.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point, because I think fighters, referees, officials in general, anybody involved in the sport, looks at the UFC as a whole, and they think, oh yeah, well, it's easy, I'll just get in the UFC, and then, you know, I'm making a living, I'm making money, and you're right, you can't really afford to take weeks off to heal. Or
one thing that really gets me is, you know, sometimes we'll see a referee in the UFC and maybe they'll get a bit of stick for something they've done, and fans will say, well, they should go down to a smaller show and get some more practice. I really don't like that notion at all. I think whatever level you're at, the referees need to be, you know, top class. Yeah. I don't think just because it's a small show, a local show, a regional show, the referees should be any less qualified than they are in the UFC.
Herb actually made a very good point. When he was delivering the course, he said, I cannot physically go through every scenario you're going to get as a referee, because no two scenarios are ever the same. He said, but what I have to assess you on through the course is how you would deal with these new scenarios, and do I feel that you could get through these? And something that he did do that I thought was extremely nice was, he said, we're not machines, we will make mistakes as referees. And he actually showed us a video of him making a mistake, and that stuck with me actually, because obviously he is, you know, the top referee. And for him to actually show that and show that he's human as well, it was really nice.
Yeah, well, I've said it on the show before. I've done a lot of things in MMA, in probably everything but referee, and that's the one job that, I mean, hats off to you, because that's the one job that carries more pressure, more, you have to think quicker, you have to be, you know, quicker on your feet than any other role, I think, except for fighter, obviously, but any other supporting role in an event. And yeah, I can't agree more. And referees are in a position, and you know, it's so easy to read a situation one way, and you put another referee in, and they read the situation entirely different.
Definitely.
Because, I mean, it's got to be quick, doesn't it?
And also, I've found that a lot of fights actually look different when you're in the cage to when you're actually outside in the audience, and that's why when people ask me to comment on another referee's work, I just won't do it, because the only person that has got that angle of the fight is themselves. You know, it's only that one person that
You know, that's
sees
a
it.
really good point. That's a really, because it's, I mean, you know, it's easy to you know, armchair quarterback or sit after the fact and say, oh, that fight was stopped too early, or oh, that shouldn't have happened that way, or oh, that shouldn't have happened that way. But yeah, the referee's vantage point is, I mean, it's different.
It's totally different, and you know, I've watched fights that I've refereed, and I had the fighter writing everywhere, oh, this awful ref stopped my fight too early. But then when I actually sat and watched it on Sky Sports, I, from that point of view, thought, well, actually, I should have gone in a second or two earlier, and I was being absolutely slated for stopping it early. So yeah, you do get two totally different views, and I think when you're actually in the cage, it's only you yourself that can see what are the fighter's eyes doing, how is he or she responding. And I don't think anybody outside the cage, even on the TV, actually has, you know, the view that we have at that particular moment.
Yeah, there's something to be said for, like you said, what are the fighter's eyes doing?
Yeah.
Really important.
That's another reason I've got so much respect for referees, you know, because in the end it's such a thankless job. You know, if you go out there and do an absolutely fantastic job all night, don't make a single mistake, no one's going to be on the message boards or on the forums saying, oh, this referee did a great job. But, you know, you do one thing that somebody's going to find a bit contentious, and then all of a sudden it blows up. So massive amount of respect for referees.
So we, kind of on that note, massive Strikeforce fight this weekend.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Tate versus Rousey, the biggest fight
Ronda
so far.
Rousey.
Yeah, the biggest fight so far in female mixed martial arts, I think, after Gina Carano and Chris Cyborg.
Yeah.
And what a fight it was as well. You know, we often talk about fights with great build-up, and this one actually lived up to the build-up, lived up to the hype, and fantastic to watch. But that, not so much the ending. Well,
that armbar was ridiculous.
Well, we can see it there. That's absolutely not right.
So yeah, I mean, you can see her arm is bent all the way back the other way. So much. I think we were talking about so much bad blood between those two beforehand. You know, I watched this fight, and my wife was watching. She says, "Why didn't she tap?" I said, "Well, because girls are stubborn."
Yeah, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the old saying, isn't it? Tap or snap, and there we see it in full effect.
So when you look at that, Danielle, as a ref, I got to ask. I mean, that's extreme. And I mean, she put the armbar on, and she cranked it and cranked it and cranked it, and you could kind of see where it sort of pops. So at what point do you step in and say, I need to stop this?
I feel very sorry for that referee, and I'm very glad I wasn't the referee for that fight, because if he'd have stopped it before, he would have had one camp absolutely slating him. Yeah. And then, you know, but she didn't tap. She obviously had no intention of tapping. So that is the question, you know, where do you call it? Yeah. And, you know, to be fair to him, I think he had to let that fight go to the end, because, you know, otherwise, like you said, there's so much build up to it, you know, that I think he couldn't have done anything different.
It actually reminds me of what I think is one of the best refereeing calls ever, and it was, I believe it was by Herb Dean actually, and that's the Frank Mir Tim Sylvia fight, UFC 44. Very early in the fight, there was a takedown by Sylvia. Mir locked up the armbar, and Herb jumped in and stopped the fight. And everyone was like, "What just happened? What just happened?" And the commentators were saying, "Oh no, I can't believe it. It's a false stoppage." And then when they showed the replay, Tim's arm snapped in two, and Tim didn't even realise. He was saying, "Let's fight," but you look at the replay, and the arm just breaks in two. Yeah, I think that's one of the best referee calls I've ever seen. Yeah,
well, you're up close and personal, aren't you? Yeah, and you know, other I've got to mention as well. I think that fight even turned the boss around a bit, didn't it? I mean, Dana White says, yeah, Rousey's going to be a star. He's not necessarily been a big fan of women in martial arts, though. We've got Kim Winlows. We're going to talk to her in a few minutes, but she's reffed some UFC fights. But I think from a fighter perspective, that did massive things, because now I think maybe Dana White's thinking about women's MMA, thinking about, you know, that this could sell some tickets. This could actually be a legitimate aspect of our sport that I've been kind of putting off for a bit.
Well, I think he knew that Gina Carano was maybe going to go to the movies. There's always been questions about Chris Cyborg, but with Ronda Rousey now, the dollar signs have obviously flashed in his eyes. I mean, she's got a great look. She trash talks like Nick Diaz quality trash talk. And she can do it in the cage as well. So, you know, why not? If he thinks he can make money doing it, he's going to put those shows on.
Sure. Well, but that's the thing. You look at somebody like Rousey, who's next? She's
well, yeah, that's the problem. I mean, you've got Marlies Kunin. She's in Invicta now, so I don't know how that's going to work out. Obviously, we've got Sarah Kaufman. There's a young girl coming up called Sarah McMahon, who's an Olympic-level wrestler. And of course, in about 12 months' time, we're going to have the return of Chris Cyborg. So there's a few fights in the pipeline. Whether they'll be in the UFC or not, I'm not sure. But Strikeforce, if Strikeforce continues as a promotion, it's definitely a home for women's mixed martial arts.
It'd be nice to have Strikeforce as a home for women's mixed martial arts. I think some fantastic things can happen there. I mean, you know, I've said on the show before, I'd rather fight two guys than one girl, because the pace is so fast and so relentless, and that fight just absolutely delivered from start to finish, and it was just full on all the way.
Absolutely.
We've got some pretty good domestic women's fighters, and we've had a couple on the show. We've had Danielle and Lisa McCollum, who just won that fight. I emceed it on Saturday. Fantastic performance.
Second round KO, 11 seconds or so?
Yeah, I mean, she made the girl quit. I mean, it was a verbal tap out.
Oh, so verbal, okay.
I mean, it was really, I mean, I think we're going to see big things from her. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that.
And also, I'm looking forward to keep seeing the progression of Kerry Maserati as well.
Yeah.
Because she's starting to do really good things.
Yeah, absolutely. And some promoters, Dave O'Donnell gives women a stage to fight. He's had a couple of good women's fights on his show as well.
He has, and on the subject of Dave, you know, I would like to say a big thank you to Dave for everything he's done for me as well, because, you know, as a female referee, he took a big chance on me.
Yeah.
And, you know, I hope it has paid off for him, and, you know, I just wanted to know how much I appreciate everything he's done for me.
Yeah, good shot. Dave's a solid guy, yeah. Right, so we're out of time for this half, but we're going to come back. When we come back, we've got Kim Winlows, the female women's UFC ref. She'll be on our digital wall. We'll have a bit of talk about that. We're going to talk to Brad Wharton about his new rankings, middleweight rankings. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. Sports Night Live presents The Cage. We've been talking women's roles in MMA this week. We've had Danielle Curzon in studio, and now I'm really excited about our guest on the digital wall. We've got Kim Winlows, UFC referee, calling in from America. Hi, Kim. How are you? Really glad that you've taken the time out to come see us today. I know it's crazy early for you, isn't it?
It's not too bad. I don't mind at all.
We've got Danielle Curzon in studio with us as well. I know she spent some time with you a couple weeks ago when she was out in America.
Hiya.
Hi, Danielle. Good to see you virtually this morning.
And you.
So we've been talking all about how women's roles are changing within MMA. We've obviously been talking about Danielle's referee career, looking at your referee career. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the challenges and things that you faced? I mean, you've been to the big show, right? So what was it like getting there?
It was definitely an interesting journey. It was started in the beginning with fighters looking at me or like, "Are you joking?" That was quite a while ago. And then when they got used to seeing me around, now they're definitely used to seeing me. And some fighters that I've refed on several occasions, or some of them get superstitious and they're really excited to have me as a referee. And it's gotten to where most of them really don't care who is reffing their fight as long as you're fair and you know what you're doing. So they're really, it doesn't matter to them whether you're male or female as long as you're competent. So, and I've proven myself to be a competent, fair referee. So most of the fighters have no issue with me reffing their fights.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good. MMA, at least in the UK, MMA sometimes tends to be a small community, and male or female sometimes is quite hard to, I guess, break into and to sort of get that universal acceptance the way you're describing from fighters, promoters, and the like. So it's really good to see somebody who's, like I said, you've been to the big show, so it's really good to see somebody who's sort of set out a goal and actually achieve that. Initially, if you give us a bit of your history, what initially made you think about becoming a referee?
Well, I was an air traffic controller, and so
were you really?
Adrenaline, yes.
I was an air traffic controller as well.
I'm sorry?
I was an air traffic controller as well.
Oh, really? How interesting.
Yeah.
We have that in common.
Yeah.
So you understand the addiction to adrenaline and rules, regulations, safety. So that's, to me, a common ground there. So I had that addiction to that, and something that's very intellectually stimulating. And so when I could no longer do that, I really missed that challenge, that having something different to do and something that really challenges the mind and the adrenaline rush that you get with that. So, and I was studying martial arts since 1992, before the UFC even began. So I just needed something to replace that because I missed it. And so it fit the role. I started out as a boxing referee. Mills Lane was my inspiration as a referee. He's in the U.S. anyway, a famous boxing referee. And people will know him mostly for the Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield fight, the famous ear fighting fight. So he's my inspiration, and he's a very little man, size-wise, and he was really roughing up these two large heavyweight boxers, and that was my inspiration, was that moment to become a referee. And when I saw him really using, it didn't matter his size, but using his ability to push these guys around and handle a very stressful situation and handle it well. And I realized, okay, it doesn't matter what size you are, you put your essence and run the ring your way, and that's what he did. And so I realized at that point, it doesn't matter what your size is, or that it's you who runs the ring. And that's where I got that from. So that's
outstanding. Yeah. Mills Lane is a whole lot of authority in a little tiny package, isn't he?
Exactly, and that's where I got that from. It's you. It's you as a person that has to take control, and that's where I've always got that. And his belief is my belief, is that every fight is a title fight, and that's how I handle that. It doesn't matter if it's an amateur fight, their first fight. Every fight is a title fight, and that's how I treat it.
That's outstanding. Yeah, and so how? Without mentioning promotion specifically, I mean, how busy do you stay? Are you working every weekend? Are you working a couple times a month? What does your schedule normally look like?
It changes month to month, depending on my personal life. Some months I am busy every weekend, and then sometimes I try to take a little bit of time off so that I can see family.
Yeah.
And have other personal projects that I do, because I do try to mentor 16 to 24-year-old troubled young adults, and so I do have other things other projects that I try to incorporate into my time. So, but there are months every weekend that I do have events, so it depends.
And what, I mean, we're almost out of time, but before we let you go, what's been your sort of highlight of your career so far?
That's a toughie. I always have goals. So whenever I meet one goal, I always have another one that I replace it with. That's always just been my style. So hopefully I really haven't had my highlight yet. I don't know.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. I feel like it's still coming. I don't know.
So how about the most exciting fight that you've had the opportunity to referee?
To me, they're really all exciting. They all have their moments. There's just too many. One doesn't really stand out above the others.
Yeah, I guess it's hard when you're working, most weekends and you're seeing hundreds of fights.
Yeah, there's just too many that I just can't have. I just don't have one that really stands out above any of the others. There's just too many. You ask that question, and it's just, my mind is just blown by all these different fights. There's no way.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, we're just about out of time. Again, I can't thank you enough for getting up early, coming on the show with us. It's been really, really great to be able to chat with you. All the best in the future.
And thank you, Kim, for all your help and mentoring.
Oh, absolutely, Danielle.
It's
absolutely.
much appreciated.
You're a sweetheart. Absolutely wonderful to work with you.
Thank you.
And if you're ever in the UK, you've always got an open invitation to come on, be our in-studio guest as well. We'd love to take you out and show you.
That's a plan. We have that in the workings, don't we, Danielle?
We do, yeah, we have a plan.
Okay, great. Well, we'll look forward to that. Again, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Brett.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye.
Like I said, it's really, really cool to see women, coming up and getting to the top of the game. Getting ready for the show, I was having a chat with my wife, who's one of your biggest fans, as you know. But I mean, she has a high-power IT job. She lives and works in a man's world, and is always, having to work that much harder to get where she needs to get.
Kim has been absolutely fantastic to me. We've been in contact for a good few months now via email. And then, like I say, we met up when I was in America and spent a lot of time getting to know each other, and also Michelle Drake Browning, who's the first female ref in Texas. And that's when Kim said, I will be your mentor, and it's lovely. So to have her and Herb at the end of the phone is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's worth its weight in gold to have people you can count on, people you can rely on.
Oh, definitely. And if you're having a bad day and that, I drop Kim an email, and it's nothing she's not been through. So it's amazing having that there.
Yeah, fair enough. Other exciting things that have gone on this week. Brad, I think you've got some new rankings out, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. First of the month, new rankings in every division. We're going to talk about welterweight rankings today, which are always a big bone of contention, because we've got not a lot of movement at the top. George St. Pierre, I don't think he's going to be going anywhere soon, but the rest of them have really been shaken up recently. Obviously,
we're going to fight about that number 5,
Yeah, I thought we might. I thought I'd put that down there just to bait you a little bit. But yeah, obviously Carlos Condit now has taken the second place, interim champion. He's going to be fighting George St. Pierre when St. Pierre comes back from injury. So potentially we're going to have a new number 1 welterweight by the end of the year, and that'll be the first time in a long time that that's happened. Nick Diaz, you're not happy with him in 5th position?
I like Koss as well, but you really rate Koss over Diaz?
You see, when I do these rankings, I don't necessarily think about who I think would beat another guy. I just do it based on the most recent results, as far as I can. And obviously, a bit of subjectivity comes into it afterwards. But if we look at number 3 and 4, Koscheck, not a fantastically convincing win, but a win nonetheless against Mike Pierce last month. Jake Ellenberger just came off a big win against Diego Sanchez. Diaz is coming off a loss, so for me that just bumps those two guys slightly above Diaz. But one fight either way is going to completely change those rankings.
Sure.
Number 6, Johnny Hendricks. I'm a big Johnny Hendricks fan. I think this guy is going to be the next big thing. You'll see just underneath him, John Fitch was the consensus number 2 for a long time. This guy only lost to George St. Pierre, and he was steamrolling everyone else. Hendricks knocked him out in 16 seconds. So Johnny Hendricks, definitely one to watch. If you've not seen him fight before, check him out. He's amazing. And he has got the best beard in mixed martial arts. Yeah. And of course at the bottom as well, we've got Martin Kampmann sneaking in. Yeah. After a very, very last-minute win against Thiago Alves last weekend, which I think we're going to talk a little bit about as well. Yeah, that was, I mean, another one of those sort of come-from-behind victories there. You know, we talked about those for the past couple of weeks. Yeah, I think it was more a case of Thiago Alves snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Yeah. He was winning that fight by a country mile. Had Kampmann within an inch of being finished towards the end of the fight, and for some reason dove in for a takedown. This is a Muay Thai stylist diving for a takedown, and Kampmann guillotine choked him with about a minute left in the fight. So that was crazy. And as I say, it sneaks Kampmann back into the rankings. So now we have an interesting situation where Martin Kampmann has a win over Carlos Condit, who's number 2, and we don't know how long George St. Pierre is going to be out for. So there's potentially a little bit of a story there, and a little bit of a chance for Martin Kampmann to maybe sneak in for a cheeky title shot with one more win. Yeah, that's a seriously stacked division right there. I mean, as you say, one fight either way can move any of those guys into any position. Absolutely. And I think that's why we're seeing Nick Diaz, who probably was around 3rd last month. That's why we've seen him slip down to 5th, just because, as you say, one fight it changes everything. Yeah, absolutely. And then quickly, also the weekend on UFC, and we got to move quick because we're almost out of time. But the Johnson McCall decision. Unbelievable. I mean, this was the first flyweight fight in the UFC, the first potential sudden victory round where if the fight was a draw, they'd get an extra 5 minutes. And the commissioner of the New South Wales Boxing Commission made an error when he tallied the scores. So what we got was a split decision in favour of Johnson. Mine went blank there. It should have been a draw. We should have had 5 more minutes. And that fight was incredible. I could have watched those two guys fight all night. So we were kind of robbed there of an extra 5 minutes. But that rematch is set for April, so we are going to see those two guys fight, and the winner will fight Joseph Benavidez for the UFC Flyweight Championship later this year. Yeah, fantastic. We're out of time. Again, this half hour goes so quickly. It does. Danielle, thank you so much for coming on the show. As I do every week, I've got a limited edition Hollywood It's Go Time t-shirt.
That's lovely.
Danielle Curzon, welcome to the Hollywood Army.
Thank you very much. And can I just say thank you for having me on, and thank you to my sponsors, Intelligent Nutrition Inc. and Seventh Day MMA, for all their help and support, and also to Gary Bond from Coliseum Sports, which is my management team, and also Dave O'Donnell. Thank you all.
Yeah, fantastic. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in this week. Next week, I'm so excited about next week's show. I've got Lena Hart, the legend from Pride, one of my inspirations, and I can't wait to talk to her, so make sure you tune in next week as well. So for number 48, Brad Wharton, for Danielle Curzon, I'm Hollywood. It's not go time, but it's time to go. See you next week on The Cage.
Stay ahead of the game with Sports Tonight Live. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Search for Sports Tonight Live on Facebook and like our fan page. Follow Sports Tonight TV on Twitter and tweet us your thoughts and opinions. Sports Tonight Live, it's the platform for the fans.